there was this spread of Islam, and obviously there was a golden age of Muslims and Islam. But then something happened. Can you pinpoint a specific event in the, let's say, 15th or 16th century? Because I've heard that the Gutenberg revolution happened in Europe, and there was a let's say typewriter invented, and this kind of pushed away the Muslims, or they fell behind technologically, or something happened, and then the colonization started. So do you know like what sort of events took place in that period of few decades that sort of left Muslims and Islam in kind of the second wheel?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, after Al-Andalus, of course, the Al-Andalus fell in 1492. That means the last province, Granada, fell in 1492. The development of Christian Europe by the 15th century, was actually going towards the Americas and Africa. So that time, indeed, colonization, the first ones to colonize the world were actually the Portuguese. And interestingly enough, Portugal, which was part of Al-Andalus, was the first Christian country, Christian nation in Europe, which saw itself as a nation and could not go further into Europe, but had to go towards the West, so had to go towards America. And that's when they established the biggest South American country, which is Portuguese-speaking Brazil. Yeah. So, as well as other colonies in Africa. So that was an important breaking point for Portugal and European development, when the Spaniards also followed, of course. But before that, other things happened, and you mentioned the printing press, for example. You mentioned that very well. A very important point when the development of the printing press developed in Europe, especially in Central Europe, the Gutenberg Bible, as you mentioned before, Germany and Central Europe, when they started printing, and the Ottoman Empire during that time, we're talking about the 14th, 15th, 16th century, when the Ottoman Empire became a very big empire, exchanged the empire of Al-Andalus as a Muslim empire, and was in southeast Europe, the Balkan Peninsula up to Vienna and Austria. At the beginning, when you look at the development of the Ottomans in the 13th, 14th, 15th centuries, you see that actually there was technological advance because the cannons were invented by the Muslims. You look at a war technology, which was very advanced, but also other parts of technology and agriculture, as in Al-Andalus was the case, was also the case at the beginning of the Ottoman Empire. So they were actually bringing a lot of knowledge and technological development into the Balkan Peninsula in the first 100, 200, 300 years. That all changed drastically from the 16th century and 15th, after Sultan Suleiman, which was the 16th century. After that, it changed drastically when Europe, Christian Europe, started with the printing press, but also the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution did not catch up with the Muslim world. The Muslim world became a poorer part of the world in a way that technology was left behind, but not only the technology of warfare, but also starting with the printing press, going deeper into any kind of technological advance that did not catch up with Europe. It was all in Western Europe, in Northern Europe, and stayed there for a longer period of time, while the Muslim world was actually deteriorating slowly but surely within the upcoming 100, 200, 300 years under Ottoman rule. The Ottomans did not realize that allowing their Christian and Jewish subjects to print freely, but not their Muslims, was one of the ways that kept the Muslim world back. But they did not do that, just to be clear here, because they thought it was a backward stage, or they were still in the past, and they didn't consider technology. The Ottomans prohibited printing for the Muslims because of the calligraphic way of the Arabic language, which was used at that time by the Ottomans. So they wrote Turkish also with the Arabic alphabet. And they had invented a lot of, calligraphy was an industrial sector of the Ottoman industry, of the Ottoman world. So many people would have lost their jobs starting the printing press. First. Second, they would have to reinvent the typewriter, the way that the printing press, which started in Europe with the Latin alphabet, had to be reinvented with the Arabic alphabet, and so on. So all this stuff had to happen, which required a lot of effort and will, and that was not the case that time. So that's what kept the Ottomans back from the printing development, which followed after that industrial development in the upcoming 100 to 200 years. So that is the major factor, the main factors what kept the Muslim world back. And the Muslim world at that time meant the Ottoman Empire, of course, because the rest of the Muslim world was either colonized or under Ottoman rule or whatever else it was. So what you mentioned, the development was kept back from the Ottoman world, from the Islamic world at that time, and that opened the Muslim world and made it very vulnerable actually to attacks from Christian Europe. And that's what happened in the end. They colonized the whole Muslim world, Africa, Asia, South America, everything was colonized in the end, until we see in the 20th century developments that we still have nowadays, that we're still seeing people trying to catch up with the West, trying to catch up with modern technology.
Mm-hmm. Do you think many people, when they associate Muslims or Islam, they think like, oh, these people are backwards because they don't, they don't allow technology, or they are against innovation in certain parts of the industry? So do you think, I mean, obviously this is not true, but maybe that was the case a few hundreds of years ago, but do you think the Muslim Ummah, let's say, they can not living here, but like somebody in, let's say, I don't know, living in Pakistan, they can ever catch up to the West in terms of this technological progress? Or what's your take on this? Because of the colonization and these things being held from them for centuries, how do you view that?
Well, look, it's also a mentality issue. If you talk about countries, there are two different things. Are we talking about states and countries, or are we talking about people? Muslim people, for example, have been traveling in the last decades and century actually towards Europe, coming to Europe and studying in Oxford and Cambridge is absolutely normal. You have Arab societies, you have Muslim Malaysians, you have many people, many Muslims from Muslim countries coming over here, coming to the West, coming to Europe, America, Australia, and studying, learning English. Many of them, the main language, the main aim of a Muslim nowadays is to learn English and to improve there. So yes, it is there. The wish and the will to actually catch up is there. With regards to government, I mean, you mentioned Pakistan. Pakistan is a nuclear power. The problem is, you might be a nuclear power, but your people are starving. So as I keep saying to the Pakistanis also, that is nice for you that you can be a nuclear power, but your people in your country are unsatisfied with the government and unsatisfied with yourselves. So you cannot be proud of being something, having caught up on the one side, but on the other side, your people are illiterate, uneducated, poor, right? So you have scientists who can cope with the West, but you have people who cannot even have a daily meal. You understand? These disparities are the problem in the Muslim world. We are in the Muslim world. We have the poorest countries in the world and the richest countries in the world. We have countries such as Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, in contrast to Mauritania, Mali, Chad. Okay, so you understand, this is the Ummah. We don't see ourselves as Ummah anymore. This is one of the biggest issues and problems that we have as Muslims. The mentality is the problem. Muslims have moved away from Islam as the understanding of Islam of our Prophet Muhammad SAW. They've moved away from this understanding. So everybody's looking into their country, their ethnicity, their background, which is a Western take. Okay, so nowadays a Moroccan looks into being Moroccan, an Egyptian into being Egyptian, not into being Arab, not even this, not into being Arab, and not into being Muslim at all. So this is all, you see the disparities that we have amongst Muslim people and Muslim nations are massive, massive. So if we don't try to catch up with that and change these disparities, there will never be a change in the Muslim world if we don't, all of us, consider us being part of the Ummah. And with Ummah, I mean also us, you and I. We should actually also be considered as part of the Ummah from Europe. So if we have problems in Europe, such as our brothers have in certain countries, such as in France, then actually the Muslim world should open and say, brothers and sisters, come to us. We welcome you. You have problems in France, come to us. We would like to help you. But I don't see that happening. If you have problems in the Czech Republic or wherever you are living, brother, you should actually have the chance to go to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, whatever. But do you think you have this? I have lived in these countries, and if I didn't have the education that I had, I wouldn't have had a job. So nobody wants you then. You understand? So this part of the Ummah, the feeling, we don't have this. We don't have this anymore. We have lost it. And this mentality has to change, first of all.
Do you think there's a special role that reverts, maybe such as I or you, I mean, you're a revert, but you've been a Muslim for decades, and I'm very fresh. But do you think there's a special role that, let's say, I can play? Maybe, you know, living in
Absolutely.
Europe, I have two companies. You know, I'm very, you know, I'm working with startups a lot. But I'm a Muslim, so that sounds very controversial. Like how this can happen, right? But
Absolutely not.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I know
No,
a lot of guys who are like entrepreneurs, but they are Muslim as well, and some of them are like white European guys looking,
yes,
you know.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, mashallah, look at America. I think it's a good example. Not the America. I'm talking about the African Americans, for example, or the Muslims in America. Mashallah, there are enough white American Muslims who have made it in the world of business and who have been making it in the world of business ever since. The same in South America. Certain countries in South America, which you might have never heard of, for example, have a massive amount of Muslims, such as Suriname, which is a Dutch Guyana, for example, above Brazil. Now, that country has 20% Muslims. And there, the majority of people are actually entrepreneurs, Muslims with background, with business background, you know. So there is nothing wrong and there is no contradiction at all. It's just what people believe in Europe. We should not believe in these contradictions. We ourselves are white Europeans. We ourselves are Muslim Europeans who are actually in the field of business, in the field of being educating people. This is my field. I like educate people. I like working in the field of education. But still, I'm also an entrepreneur in a way that I'm trying to sell my courses. I'm trying to sell what I'm doing and who I am. So there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. In the contrary, absolutely, I agree when you said, do we play a role as reverts? Of course, we play a massive role, and especially in Europe, because that is our continent. That's where we come from. So if you look back at the time of Prophet Muhammad, when he was educating people and he had his Sahaba around them, Sahabi came from all over the place. So he would send a Yemeni to Yemen to educate their people. He would not send somebody from Mecca to Yemen. You understand? He would send somebody from their own people back to their people, because these people would listen to you. You would speak the same language. You would understand each other better. You have the same mentality. You understand their mentality. So if somebody needs to make da'wah, or at least to educate their people about Islam, then I would have to, as I'm doing, alhamdulillah, also talk to my people in Greece, for example. I have to talk to them. Now, I have many people, yeah? I grew up in Germany, so I can also talk to them, of course. I have the same mentality. I understand their mentality. We speak the same language. So yes, you need, and your role is in that area, in the area where you have grown up and where you are now, because you understand their mentality and you understand these kind of people in your area better. Not me. If I came now, even if I learned Slovak or even if I learned Czech, if I came now over to your area, I would still be considered a foreigner, right? I would still be a foreigner, even if I learn the language. So for that reason, it is up to you to educate and to change the misconceptions that people have there, as I have been trying in the last 3 decades, actually, of being a Muslim, alhamdulillah. So yes, that is a massive role and a burden that we have, but it's a role. And I like taking this role on board. I mean, it can be a burden, it can be difficult sometimes. I'm not saying it's easy, but what is easy? And why should everything be easy just to do it? No, I mean, in order to pass an exam, you also have to learn. Right? And sometimes it takes weeks before you can pass the exam. Sometimes you have to redo the exam because you didn't pass it. So there you go. So you see, nothing in life is easy. So why should this be easy? So there you go.